To be honest with you, I'm itching to preach on that parable, but I won't. Partially because actually I am the treasurer in my house. And we are the second largest house, I believe, of Vincentians in the province. And I always tease my superior, Father Pat Flanagan. I usually say to him, you're the superior, but actually I have the power because I'm the treasurer. We all know that the one that controls the money has the power. One of my little responsibilities as treasurer in the past house that I lived in the current house that I live, has been at this time of the year to buy the Christmas stamps for the guys. The guys who still send the traditional paper and ink snail mail Christmas cards like I do. And so last week we had a house meeting, and I handed out a form. I had cut and paste from the U.S. Postal site images of the religious stamps. And I said to the guys, now put your name down, put the number of stamps you want, and just check off the style you want, and I'll order those for you. I'm going to order them online. And the reason why I'm ordering them online is last year I actually went over to the post office in Manhattan and bought them. And I went right around this time of the year. It was 1 week before Thanksgiving. It was a Friday evening. And I went over because the U.S. Post Office at 34th and 8th Avenue is open, I believe, all night in Manhattan. So I knew I could get several hundred, if not more, religious stamps there. As I was coming out of the post office, having purchased the stamps, it had been raining, and there are marble steps. I was wearing docksiders that were so worn they had no tread left on them, and as I was going down the steps to get the E-train back to Jamaica, I took a little slip, and I fell probably about 20 steps, marble steps. I cracked several teeth. I broke my nose in 2 places. It hasn't affected my looks. I've always looked this hideous. But I ended up at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital at 59th and 9th Avenue, between 9th and 10th. The doctor looked at me, told me I broke my nose in 2 places, sewed up my mouth, and around 2 o'clock in the morning sent me on my way. I got an E-train back to Jamaica, Queens around 2 o'clock in the morning. And I know that here in Philly, the Broad Street subway and the Frankfurt L, being a Philadelphian, I know they close around like midnight, between midnight and 1 o'clock. But in New York, the subways never stop. I got on and the subway was pretty full. People were coming home from the shows, and I actually got a seat. But it had been a bit of a bad night for me, and as I sat down, I fell asleep. And I woke up, and when I woke up, even though the car was still filled with people, it was like there was a firewall around me, 5 feet in both directions. Nobody would come near me. And then I looked down at myself, and I saw all the blood. And I'm sure I looked like, as my mother would say, the wrath of God. But I suddenly, for one moment, had a sense for what people might feel like who are isolated or lonely or feel that no one is present to them. The phrase that we're meditating on today is this simple phrase, "The Lord be with you." And it is the last of the phrases that St. Gabriel speaks to Mary in our current prayer that we call the Hail Mary. And to be honest with you, in both the Greek original and in the Latin, there is no verb. The verb is sort of understood. And therefore, the phrase could actually mean the Lord will be with you, or the Lord is with you, as we translate it, or may the Lord be with you. Given its context, it probably means the Lord is with you. But it's rather an interesting phrase, because right after St. Gabriel says this to Mary, Luke says that Mary became deeply troubled, and she wondered what kind of greeting this might be. And that's when St. Gabriel says to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary." It was well for Mary to feel deeply troubled. The Carmelite poet, Jessica Powers, has a line in one of her poems in which she says, "Never go anywhere without the angels." And that's true enough. But if you know anything about your Bible stories, when the angels show up, when they leave the throne of God, as we heard from the book of Revelation today, and they stop singing and they show up, you better put on your crash helmets and your life jackets, because something's about to unfold. And even more so, when you start getting promises that God is going to be present, you know that you're going to have a rough time of it and that there are going to be bumps in the road. If you don't believe this, simply go back and remember what was said to Abraham and to Jacob, to Moses and to Joshua, to Gideon and to Jeremiah. They were all told that God was going to be with them. But it was not an easy road for them. And so it is with the Blessed Mother. The Lord is with you. But Mary knows intuitively that just as much as that is good news, it's also tough news. Because as the prophet Simeon will tell her, a sword is going to pierce her heart too. I mentioned yesterday and the day before the quirks of the sisters that I had in school. One of the quirks of my second grade nun, Sister Madonna Therese, I still remember it. She used to have us sit sort of to the side of our seats so that we could make room for our guardian angels. Some people would be horrified by that. I kind of simply look back on it now as a very sweet memory. As I got older, I began to wonder if maybe she missed the lesson in which we learned that angels don't take up space, so you don't really have to make room for them. But as I got wiser, I began to wonder if there wasn't something more to what she was doing. Because we all know that at times in life, it almost does seem as if the seat next to us is nothing more than empty space. But it's not. The Lord was with Mary, and the Lord is with us. And in the midst of life, even when we slip and we break noses and teeth, and we end up in hospitals, and we find ourselves on trains apparently feeling alone, there is someone beside us. And that someone is Mary, and that someone is also God.